I think this is just a preview for what we're going to see in Frisco in January. I think these are the two teams. I think they'll get the top two seeds in the playoffs.
Welcome to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kyler Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation, we hope you're toe tapping into your Monday, catching or not catching a good old time to start your week, because you are in with the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Jamie Williams, Matt Frazee, and the Rev coming to join us, or the bunny, the evil bunny, the happy bunny, whatever bunny he is. Famous in Brookings, joining us this week to break down what is one of the most chaotic and fun weeks of action I've seen of FCS football all over the landscape, from a team like Fordham to a team like SIU to a team like, of course, Montana State and South Dakota State. What an absolute fun weekend of FCS football. Before we get going, guys, I have to give two huge shout outs. As you know, we will wear and rock apparel and items that we receive. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're missing out on all the cool things we've got rocking. First off, Walk On Apparel, one of our two sponsors, sent me this shirt from Chattanooga, and it is sick. Mascot on the front, blue and gold reppin'. This is one of the coolest mock t-shirts for Chattanooga. Thank you so much to Walk On Apparel. And if you use promo code FCS Fans Nation, you're going to save a whopping 15% for every purchase you make with them. So we appreciate Walk On Apparel sending us some of the gear. And then, guys, check this out. As you know, I was the winner of the taco bet when it comes to how many FCS over FBS wins. And I was sent this guy by Mr. Jeremiah Rash. Look at this. Bobblehead. Now NFL Jeremy Chin, safety, an absolute monster who helped beat NDSU back in the day. And this amazing little bobblehead, I just want to give it a shout out to Jeremiah, not just for the bobblehead sending, but he is just one of the best humans that you could ever come across. And he is so kind, and he loves his Salukis. And I've said it before on this podcast, even if it was against NDSU, I think if I saw the Salukis beat NDSU in the Natty, I'd be so happy for Jeremiah, because that dude is a diehard. So, dude, I'm going to rock this back with Rev's Lumberjack and Thundar in the background. And this is forever imprinted, and I appreciate you, my man. So taking up a little bit of time here in the intro, let's just get a quick word from our sponsors before we roll into some of our big 7 questions. The FCS Fans Nation podcast is brought to you by Walk On Apparel. Walk On Apparel specializes in FCS and mid-major clothing and believes that every fan base should have quality options to rep the schools they love. Along with you receiving a great product, 10% of the profit from every sale is donated directly to that school's athletic fund. Visit walkon-apparel.com and use promo code FCS Fans Nation to get 15% off of your purchase. Limited schools currently available with new releases monthly. Walk On Apparel. Up the fans, up the culture. The FCS Fans Nation podcast is also sponsored by the ultimate analytical prediction football experience. Introducing the Versus Sports Simulator, your secret weapon for predicting FCS, mid-major, and all other football games. Get ahead of the game and take your sports betting and knowledge to the next level with a site and app that's built to ignore bias and just give you the facts. If you subscribe today and use promo code FCS Fans Nation, you'll save 20% on your subscription. You can download the Versus app on the App Store and Google Play by searching Versus Sports Simulator or going to versussportssimulator.com. With Versus, it's not a prediction, it's science.
The top 7 FCS topics of the week. This is the Big 7.
Gentlemen, the game of the century, number 1 versus number 3, is a great way to start the Big 7 this evening. And we have two of our great fans asking us the questions to set this sucker up. Mr. Mitch Fargan and Michael Hamill want to know, after the MSU-SDSU game, do you think SDSU is more vulnerable than you originally thought? Is Montana State better than you thought? And or more on par with the XDSUs? Oh boy, loaded question. That's okay. You were there. You were live. Rev, what were some of your thoughts to see this game in person?
Well, I don't like with the question. Montana State's exactly where I thought they were. I've had them at number 2 in my poll through the entire year, and with the result, that's where they should be, is number 2. They are up there. They looked good. They did. SDSU did have some vulnerabilities, and you could see it. In the first half, Tommy Malott was moving the ball and then running like crazy, and then losing him in the second half and having Chambers come out. Chambers played a great game, but South Dakota State managed to adjust at halftime, and that's what you see number 1 teams do. You see them adjust and find a way to win. I think Montana State is up there with the XDSUs in that top tier, that upper echelon of schools. I think this is just a preview for what we're going to see in Frisco in January. I think these are the two teams. I think they'll get the top 2 seeds in the playoffs. And then NDSU will have to go on the road to one of them in the semis potentially. So, yes, the answer is a loaded question, but answer the question, yes, to all of them. All the questions, the answer is yes. They are that good. They're up there, but they're right where they should be as the second best team in the nation.
Let me just say, the last year when SDSU rolled everybody, then like 2 months on Twitter and Facebook followed the debate of, well, who should have been, who was 2, who was 3, was it Montana State, was it NDSU? Bunch of loser mentality, bunch of junk. I hated that stupid narrative. Everybody was like, well, we were actually probably number 2. Who gives a crap? SDSU was number 1. Nobody cares about who was number 2 or 3. Now, I say that to say this, because this does matter, because these two teams are going to have a common opponent. Like, I hate to not take away from the analysts of the game. We're going to get more into that. But NDSU and Montana State are both playing South Dakota State. How they fare against them, and they're both probably going to lose to them. Well, one of them did. One of them is probably going to. Is going to matter a lot if these teams have successful seasons beyond SDSU. Jamie, what are some of your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I was really impressed by both teams. Montana State in the first half, South Dakota State showing the championship medal to kind of have some ice in their veins and come back. The game-winning drive, Gronowski with the 2 just monster pass plays, a couple missed tackles on the touchdown, but you got to make the plays, and he did. Last play of the game, I know there's been a lot of pictures on the internet, a lot of arguing back and forth. I still don't know what the official saw that called it a touchdown to start, because my initial eye said, okay, he's out by the time he had got actual possession of the ball. I thought it was going to be overturned. From a standpoint of that, I felt like you got to get the call right. They took the time. They got it right. It sucks for Montana State. But what sucks more for Montana State is they shot themselves in the foot all night. Too many penalties. You can't have false starts at the 1 yard line, period. When you block the punt, and I believe you all saw me say this as soon as it happened, when they didn't scoop and score that, they were in trouble. Because what happened? The Jackrabbits defense locked down and held them to a field goal. So people will say MSU lost the game. Yeah, they did. I mean, they should probably have won with some better thought processes. But at the same time, the Jackrabbits are the champions. They locked in when they needed to, and they made those 2 goal line stands, which both became field goals. And they could have easily both become touchdowns. And as far as I'm concerned, Montana State, I said last night I was going to drop them to 4 just to move Idaho up to 3. As I've thought more about that, and I haven't put my top 25 out yet, so preview shot here, guys. I think I'm going to reverse that, and I am probably going to slide Montana State from 3 to 2. And nothing against NDSU, because they've done exactly what they were supposed to do, exactly what we expected them to do. But Montana State did everything except for win that game, and it was just about execution. And I'll understand the statement that champions execute, and that's true because the champions did execute, but Montana State was right there. I think we've got at least 3 teams in the top tier. I don't think yesterday's result should lessen your opinion of South Dakota State either. It should elevate your opinion of Montana State because we've got a lot of good football teams. And while I still would pick South Dakota State to win every game all the way out, we might have a little bit of a race.
Yeah, it was first off, QB1, number 1 quarterback in the FCS, Mark Gronowski, best quarterback in the FCS. He'll get the Easton Stick and Brock Jensen treatment all season long. He won't play crap defenses and put up 50 touchdown passes, and so he won't win a stats award. But that's exactly the guy when you're down those kind of points, 4 points or whatever it was, and 3 points. You need the touchdown. You got 2 minutes left. It's all on the line. The guy has the it factor. He's going to get it done. When I saw that he had 2 minutes left, I'm like, I don't think the Jacks have lost this game. And
neither.
No,
you could look at it to be like, hey, Montana State, they're so close. Like, boy, in a rematch, I wouldn't want to see them again. It's entirely possible. I've seen 2 undefeated NDSU teams, and I hate to always be comparing that, but I've seen what I've seen. This might have been just the one game that actually is close for SDSU. Like when NDSU was undefeated in 2013, they beat UNI barely on a last-second close touchdown by 4 points. 2018, they barely got by SDSU. Besides that, everything else was a slaughter. This might be that wake-up call for a really talented South Dakota State team. That might have been the chance for Montana State. And I was wrong. Yeah. SDSU didn't blow them out of the water, so I was wrong there. But I'm not willing to say that the Jacks are more vulnerable, which is part of this question. I don't think so at all. I think that might have been the shot for Montana State.
The other thing I would say, too, is, the loss of Malott was huge because Chambers played the entire second half. And until he had to throw on that last drive, it was a one-dimensional team. Now, they were still very successful at times moving the ball on the ground, but he wasn't really a threat to throw. And the first time he threw, he got picked off.
Mm-hmm.
So, losing a lot might have changed. Not losing a lot, I should say, might have changed the outcome, but we'll never know. But Malott, unfortunately, that's his lot. Like, he does tend to get hurt. Yeah. And he's just one of those guys, and it sucks. And they are prepared because they've got Chambers, and you play what's in front of you. And great hats off to both teams. Good result. Hang your head high, Montana State. You'll be back, but I think Matt might be right. This might be the shot in the ass that the Jacks needed.
Yeah, when you're talking about the vulnerability with the schedule, the only game I see that is vulnerable, really vulnerable to them, and it's not necessarily NDSU, and that's not a slight against NDSU. It's just they've been on a roll against them. But UNI is on Hobo Day, and historically that has always been the game where South Dakota State has had their stumble. And it's one of those things where Farley gets his guys up. It's Northern Iowa will look like just crap the entire season, but the moment they go to Brookings on Hobo Day, they become the 85 Bears. And it's just, and I stole that off of Twitter from somebody, but it's accurate. So, but it's true. And so that would be the one game I would watch out for them, because I think the other ones they're in the, in the driver's seat to win. Also, too, if you kind of think about it, this is weird. I know it was their second game, but in a way it was kind of their first game. Their first game was against Western Oregon. Mm-hmm. A game like that, you're not shaking all the rust off. You're only having your starters play part of the game. They're not going the full time. I feel like this, like you said, this is a true wake-up call to them to say, hey, this was our first full game against a D1 opponent. We played the second, third best team, depending on how you vote them. We need to fix these issues because they did show them, and that's what you do. And I think they can do that.
Yeah, we said that all the time in the parking lot next to the shopping mall in Fargo. When NDSU would have a rough game on championship years, we'd go, this will be the one that wanks them up. We'd say that all the time. And I just feel like that's going to be this for SDSU this season. But yeah, what a hell of a game. That was awesome. I would not be disappointed in seeing a rematch of that down in Frisco or in the playoffs anytime besides that. So great game. We've got more questions in the quick hit to cover that one. Let's cover just a team that, boy, talk about flying under the radar. Mr. Cody Werlinger says, is SIU for real? And with you and I starting 0-2 again, is their season over? So, gentlemen, let's talk a little Southern Illinois University football. Jeremy Chin, alumni here, Jeremiah Rash style. Holy moly, Salukis. Jamie, you are the stats top 25 extraordinaire, best voter on the whole poll. What are you thinking about SIU right now after an FBS win?
I am super impressed. I said, in the week 0 podcast, I even said it last week. I wanted to see what they were before I put them in my top 25. Saw it last week with a really strong win over Austin Peay, who now that we have data points now, we have more than just 1 week of data points. Austin Peay gave Tennessee a pretty decent game. So that makes that Southern Illinois win for them, to me, look a little bit better. And the week before, Tennessee blew out Virginia. So their Virginia is now 0-2 because they lost yesterday to somebody. But Austin Peay looked pretty good yesterday. I kind of had a feeling Southern Illinois would lose that or would win that game yesterday. So they've now got an FBS win to go with a solid win, which I had Austin Peay ranked. Like I said, maybe I shouldn't have, but they were ranked coming into last week. The next week, they finish off their out of conference with Southeastern Missouri, who is a top 15 team. If they come out of that 3-0, who's got a better resume starting right there? So they just have to kind of make their way through their season and really not screw it up. I mean, let's see. I haven't looked at their schedule.
Got it pulled up here for you, Jamie.
There we go.
The big thing is that Southern Illinois, they're going to they get South Dakota State, but they do get them at home, and that's huge. Now, they are going to have to travel to Fargo. Those are going to be big, big, big ones. But let's just say they beat SEMO. They got the FBS win. Let's say they lose to both Dakotas. If there's enough, we kind of talked about this last week. There's enough if there's one lost teams and kind of way weaker conferences, way weaker strength of schedule. I mean, you still can look at a 7 or 8 seed there. You can still look at a seeded team. And that's to say that they can't go into Fargo and win. And at home against South Dakota State, that's a home game. Bring the fans out. If they're undefeated up at that point, oh, man, number 1's coming into town. I'm not saying I'm going to pick the Salukis there. I'm going to pick the Jacks because I think they're rolling all the way through. But, boy, even a good showing could be so strong. So, I mean, SIU is looking really good. And, yeah, that SEMO matchup is going to be outstanding. Yeah.
That's a defense that you don't want to see get rolling because they are exceptional. I mean, just they held – and I know Northern Illinois is in the MAC, and the MAC is terrible. I mean, look at what the MAC did yesterday. They lost to Southern Illinois. They lost to Fordham without any of their talent, which good on Fordham. New Hampshire was a play away from beating the Chippewas. It's just Akron should have lost to Morgan State. There was a random, fluky miracle fumble recovery for a touchdown. So the MAC, we all know the MAC stinks, but it's still an FBS win. It still is looked at that way. And to go in there and win 14-11 after putting up 40 and really theoretically only allowing 3 through 3 quarters last week, this team is a rocket. They were out of my ballot at first. They were 19 last week, and they will not be 19 this week. They might even have a single-digit number.
They go beat SEMO. They're going to roll the next 3. Absolutely roll them. And then they'll roll into South Dakota State undefeated. And, boy, we could have another classic on our hands. Could be really, really good. Don't worry, Rev. I don't mean to pass you over on the SIU talk because I kind of want to get you in on this next one, which is from Mr. Evan Wilson. Evan says, does Idaho, after crushing FBS Nevada, deserve the 3 spot this week? Okay, so I'll tweak this a little bit. We all know we're going to say no to the 3 spot. And I'm going to make this one statement. We'll move past it. If you think NDSU is the same as last year, and you don't think that they are vastly improved, vastly better in the passing game, not like extreme, but way better, and that defense is 1,000 times better from last year, you're just not watching. And I don't care who the opponent is. You just have no eye test and you haven't paid attention. That's okay. You'll see it. They're not going to beat South Dakota State, but they're way better than they were last year. So they don't deserve the 3, but Rev, do they deserve the 4? Do they deserve the 4? And maybe you do think they deserve the 3, and we can argue over some beers here.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm glad we're done with the biased admin part of that part of the podcast just now. But no,
Right,
I'm kidding.
Rev, you know
I'm
that
kidding.
now that NDSU sucks like everybody else, we're not top dogs. I can be a little bit more douchey, right? That's been authorized. You know this.
So you look at this. Idaho went up and beat up on just a god awful Lamar team of Beaumont. That win didn't do anything to excite me. Nevada sucks. Like, there's no other nice way of saying this. Nevada is absolute garbage. But much like Buffalo losing to Fordham, much like Northern Illinois losing to Southern Illinois, it's an FBS win. But do you lose a little bit of stock in that? Because closer to kickoff, Idaho became favored. I saw one line was 5.5 points. One line was 3. So I don't know if you can even view that as true as a true upset. Do I think that they're the 4th best team in the country right now with 2 sets of data points? Sure. They're off to the best start they've had since the 90s. Eck has got that team fired up. Do I think that they're up there? Yeah. Are they the third best team in the nation? No, I still think that's NDSU. I think you could argue with them or with Holy Cross in that sort of 4-5 area, but I also wonder too what's going to happen when we get into Big Sky play, if they're going to be able to keep this momentum or if they're going to have a stumble where they shouldn't have a stumble. But for the question for right now, yeah, I'd say they're a top 5 team. I think there's evidence to support it.
Yeah, their schedule it's brutal. I mean, they've got another FBS game next week at Cal. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what that result is. If they win it, then, I mean, it's just more bonus.
You put them over NDSU, Jamie. They beat Cal. They get 2 FBS wins in there.
Resume-wise, they would be. And, NDSU has their own issue this week. So let's see what happens there. But right now, I think I'm going to have them 4. But looking at that schedule, Sacramento State comes to Kibbe after the Cal game. And then they go to Eastern Washington, which is always a tough game for them. Then a cream puff. Then they've got back-to-back the Montanas at home. So that's a good thing. They get them both at home. They get the Bobcats. What's going to be a huge game coming off of their bye. Cream puff, Northern Colorado. They go to Weber. They're not going through that without a trip up or 2. But they do have that money in the bank. And right now, based off of what we've seen, the data points that we've got, I'm going to have them at 4 or 5 just because they've got an FBS win. I've had high thoughts on them already coming in, and they're going to have plenty of time to back that up and validate my ranking, or they'll fall down some and they'll be, a mid-teens to 20 team by losing to a couple of those teams. And I think they're going to drop a couple games, but that's the Big Sky.
I'm lazy, Jamie, and I just like to go off of the playoff rounds for like who you are, because that's what lazy analysis does. Quarterfinal team, Idaho. Think they're going to make the quarters this year. If you had to predict right now,
I would say they're probably a quarterfinal. Quarterfinal should be at least their goal, with a semifinal stretch goal depending on the matchup. But I think they can make the quarters.
Okay, Rev, you seem to be nodding, and I know everyone's watching on YouTube and subscribing on YouTube, FCS Fans Nation. So you also agree there, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And given the right matchup, given where they potentially would be seated, they could easily be a semifinal team. But yeah, like Jamie said, semifinals be the stretch goal. Quarterfinals should be what's expected out of them this year.
Very cool. We'll see what happens for Idaho. Chris Hammond's fighting Vandals. V's up. All right, guys. Speaking of this, is the fan questions are awesome this week. It's almost like you guys were like, we're just going to give them a perfect template of every team that impressed and everything that was awesome. And we go on to Mr. Seth Meyer here. He says, Holy Cross is a legit national title contender. Change my mind. Whoa. Okay. Legit national title contender. That's contender. So it all depends how you view it. Jamie, what do you think? National title contender.
Quarterfinal contender with the upside of semifinal, just like Idaho. Solid team. Matthew Sluka is phenomenal. They were right there with Boston College yesterday. I think a lot of people thought that they could potentially win that game. But Boston College kind of just held them at arm's length all game. It wasn't as close overall as that 3 points game because they kind of stayed there when we would draw back. But, they performed admirably against a Power 5 team. And it just tells me what I already knew. Holy Cross is a strong, solid 4-9 football team with a chance. I would expect quarterfinals from them with, depending on matchups, an outside shot at the semis. Obviously, you can sit there and say 8-10 teams have a shot at the semis, and that's probably legit, depending on matchups. But a lot of them, when you really look at it, their real ceiling is the quarterfinals, and I think that's what this team really is. They are not, in my opinion, a national title contender.
They probably needed that win yesterday to be in. We've talked about seeding and how important that is, and home field advantage, or not going to a Fargo and not going to a Brookings, not going to a Montana Grizz in December. And you probably needed that one yesterday based off your strength of schedule to put yourself in a good position. And I think that puts them in the non-national title contender range. However, many fans will say, well, when you look at the playoffs last year, they're bringing back all these people, and they were the only ones who really looked good against South Dakota State. Bison looked like trash. Montana State got murdered. Now things have changed, but Holy Cross is bringing most of it all back. So, Rev, are we wrong here? They got a shot or what?
No, they don't have a shot. They're going to be, you have to think about the seeding. And if you look at it right now, it's going to be SDSU 1, Montana State 2, North Dakota State 3, Idaho 4, or some combination of those 4 teams in the top 4 seeds, right? So then you got Holy Cross as somewhere in a 5 to 8, and so that means they're going to have to go on the road and play one of those teams. They did match up very well against South Dakota State for most of that game. They gave South Dakota State a good game, but I think they would get to any one of those teams, and they would probably get obliterated, to be honest with you. They do bring back their weapons. They've got a great quarterback, Saluka, but I just am not sold on them being a national title contender, especially with the fact that they're not going to be home the entirety of the playoffs, and they'll have to go on the road to a place that is an absolute, nightmare to go play in December. So sorry, Seth. No.
It's so much about where you line up with matchups and where you got to go. And, it's so tough on a weaker strength of schedule. And they got to play Fordham, which now, I don't know, guys. We have a question about it. I know we hate it early, but we'll have to see. Speaking of hating early or maybe loving now, Mitch Fargan, Mitch asked us probably 17 questions on the post today. Just kidding. It was probably about 7 or 8. But Mitch, if you ask that many good questions, we're going to put you on here. So you guys are going to hear Mitch Fargan a lot. That is his last name, Fargan. I mistyped his name up top, and maybe it's biased, but I typed it Fargo, I think.
Of course you did.
Apologize for that. But Andrew Markham, my good Margarita friend from UIW, him and Mitch together basically have asked a similar question. How the SoCon has played so far, how many will make the playoffs? And please talk about Samford and their poor start. And Jamie, you are a WCU chest pounder based off of some pretty damn good predictions. Why don't you talk about the SoCon a little bit and have your moment on the floor here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the most impressive game of the day for me was Western Carolina. And I've said last year, look for them to be a team that takes a jump because they were 1-something, and then they wound up in the middle of the pack. And I said, this is my outside shot team at making the playoffs. And yesterday they hosted Samford, who won every SoCon game last year, and they absolutely handled them 30-7. Michael Heyer still threw for 300 yards because he's extremely freaking talented. But Western Carolina dominated that game. Desmond Reed had 170-some yards, I think, running the ball. 170 on the nose. I just looked it up. And that game was never in doubt. They had a long rain delay that could have just derailed them like it did UVA yesterday. And they just came back, and all they did was just keep putting goose eggs on Stanford's side, and they added to their lead. So that's a really impressive team. I don't know what to think of Samford right now because all we have is a win over Shorter, which is not a Division I school, and this bad loss.
Are you willing to punt on them yet? I saw Craig Haley stood by them still. Some of the big hitters still stood by them.
I'm not.
You know, punt? You going to keep them?
I'm gonna obviously drop them down. Western Carolina will be in my top 25. But I still like Samford. I just think that Western Carolina might now be that third team instead of it being Mercer, instead of it being Chattanooga. It might be Western Carolina. Just looking at Mercer, they handled their business against Moorhead. It's a little bit of a slow start. Carter Beebe had a nice game. Devin Harper from a all-purpose yardage standpoint. I believe when we had Rev a couple weeks ago, that's one of the names he called out. So Harper had a great game yesterday, made Rev look good. Furman performed all right against South Carolina. I think, the SoCon is what we thought it was. Although it looks like, that might be up for grabs of who the actual best team is, but I still think we might be looking at a conference that is probably going to be sniffing at 3 bids and hoping they get the 3. And hopefully they don't just wind up with 2. Hopefully they get that 3rd. Hopefully Western Carolina can force the issue. Hopefully Samford can rebound. But, the rest of it, VMI, not good. Citadel, awful. Might be the worst team in the FCS, one of them. Wofford, they couldn't do anything with William & Mary yesterday. East Tennessee State, don't really know what to think of them. Haven't really seen them on a level playing field yet. So, a ways to go. But early returns on the SoCon we'll see.
I'm still super high on Furman, and I'm with you, man. That South Carolina loss, that's not the worst. 47-21, going into SEC country. We're going to learn a lot about the SoCon based off Furman, who is always my dark horse, always my love. If I have to pick a new FCS team, it's going to be them. FU all the time, baby. But they're going to Kennesaw State. I anticipate them winning that game. They're going to play Mercer at home. They get the Citadel, who stinks, as Jamie would say. And then they play Samford. And then Western Carolina. Like, the next 5 weeks of Furman's schedule is going to tell you a lot about the SoCon if you believe that Furman is the team this year. If you think they are the ones who are going to represent the SoCon the best, and they're bringing it back, and they almost beat Incarnate Word last year in the playoffs, and they just have so much promise, you're going to see maybe a strength level of, like, are they the standard, and how good can people try to keep up with the standard? Dustin Helton, the Rev. What do you think, man? You sold on the SoCon here or no?
The biggest problem with the SoCon to me is they just cannibalize themselves when it comes to record and playoffs more than any other conference. And part of that is because for the most part, they don't have the out of conference strength to help out to give them a playoff argument each year. I'm not punting on a Samford, although the fact that certain folks don't have Western Carolina in their top 25 is a concern to me. Like, I don't know how you don't have them in there after that performance, especially if you're still ranking Samford.
That's the key.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be – I think they're only going to get 3. I think it would be Samford, Furman, and Western Carolina. And with what Kerwin Bell's done in the Wii, I wouldn't be surprised if you were talking about Western Carolina being a title contender for the SoCon. Honestly, like the other, I mean, like I don't think Mercer has. I thought Mercer was going to be a playoff team, but they've got the weapons, so they just don't have the quarterback. And Jamie was right about that. Chatty's doesn't have anything, so I think it just comes down to those 3 schools.
I'm also concerned about Mercer's defense.
Yeah,
with all that talent, they give up 20-something to Moorhead.
Yeah,
and I get that Ole Miss is super, super good, but still a 70 bomb. And against UNA, they played okay, but not great, and that was week 0.
Yeah, I think honestly, we doubted UNA, but UNA might be a little bit better than folks thought.
Whoa! Don't say we. Don't say we doubted UNA.
Sorry,
I
doubted. I doubted UNA too. I doubted them, but maybe they're a little better than we thought. But no, I like Western Carolina. I haven't been as vociferous as Jamie has been about them, but I love
vociferous. Brian Thompson, get your dictionary out and look at vociferous.
Taco King's not going to be like, what's going on? Oh,
Anyway, yeah, 3 teams. That's I think what the SoCon gets. They're gonna have one team that's gonna be like 8-3, and then 2 that are 7-4, and they're gonna get those 7-4 teams in.
very good. All right. SoCon, your destiny is figured out here. Something that could be hard to figure out. One of our final 2 questions here in the Big 7. Mitch Fargan, here we go. Do we all want Jackson State to make the playoffs now, since they probably won't make their conference championship? It is super, super interesting to look at Jackson State here and break them down a little bit. Of course, they had the big win over South Carolina State, and then they lose to the Rattlers, as was predicted by us. And then Jackson State goes and beats Southern. Pretty good victory yesterday. And you got the rest of their schedule pulled up here on YouTube. So the question really is, do we see Jackson State putting themselves in a position, because most of us are agreeing that the Rattlers are gonna take the thing. What do you think? Does Jackson State have a shot at the playoffs? Jamie, is this the year, because of those auto bids and conferences, that we might see this?
I think they're going to be in the discussion. And he says, do we want to see them in the playoffs? Do we want them to make those? I want the best 24 teams in. If they're one of those 24, then absolutely I want to see them in there. If they're not, then nah, they can watch just like the rest of us. But their season will tell us what they're going to do. I think, like we said, Florida A&M is probably going to be that team. And the Rattlers hung in very, very strong yesterday with South Florida. I even thought there was going to be a chance they could make a couple plays and pull that upset. So Florida A&M is a solid team. So, yeah, I think Jackson State's going to be that next team. Obviously, they won't be able to play in the SWAC title game because that'll be FAMU. And they'll go or in the Celebration Bowl because that'll be FAMU. And we'll see where they are. I mean, they don't have much. I think if they want a chance to get one of those playoff bids, they've got to beat Texas State this week and put that FBS win on the resume, because we all know that, unfortunately, the strength of schedule matters, and the SWAC is always going to be low on that strength of schedule. So I kind of say you got to watch them this week if you think they're going to get into the discussion.
Could not agree more, Jamie. That's spot on. Texas State is the one, and then you got to run the table and do your best against the Rattlers and see how it goes. And then circumstances have to fall your way a little bit. The reality is that just what you said, Jamie, we want all the best teams in there, Mitch. We want the best 24 to compete and go for a national title. And I would say Ivy League, we don't defend them at all. They should be sending teams to the playoffs. We do defend the Celebration Bowl because it's a big moneymaker. It's huge for viewership. The pride of it and the history of what has built to what the Celebration Bowl is a really powerful thing. Tons of crowd, and it's the pride of those conferences. So we do defend that. But if Jackson State isn't worthy of the top 24 teams, I'm not going to be on repeat mode here. Just like Jamie said, then they're not going to be in. But they do have a shot, and it starts with Texas State. So we need to see what happens with them, how all of that plays out, and whether they can pull off a victory or not. And Rev, I want to give this last question in the Big 7 to you. It's from Mr. Preston Adams. This is what I love about Preston. I don't believe he uses Facebook anymore, but on Twitter, like Sunday morning, I don't ask for questions on Twitter. He just tags the page and he's like, here it is. I'm going to ask this question. I hope you see it, Matt. And Preston, I always see it. So I appreciate you, buddy. Congrats to your Dukes on a big win over that young, scrappy, up-and-coming Virginia team. Preston says we
18 straight versus the state of Virginia, by the way.
Ooh, own the state, Dukes. We saw some upsets and very close games yesterday. Which outright upset was the most impressive, and which teams made good names for themselves despite losing? Preston, I'm going to tweak this question just a little bit because you kind of asked broad all over, which I love, because it sets me up to kind of ask you and throw it at you, Jamie, Dustin, what we haven't talked about yet. Maybe there's teams we haven't discussed or said. What is the most impressive thing for you? Who are you impressed by? I'm going to start. Something I predicted is Weber State. And I do not and have not and will not buy the hype of UNI this year. They stink. I don't care that they got a quarterback. He must stink. But UNI is not good this year. But Weber's going in and dismantling UNI at the UNI Dome, which is not an easy place to play, is very impressive to me. And I was right about UNI, and I was wrong about Weber. Because on our January podcast, way back after the Natty, they were like, who are you not sold on for next year? And I said, Weber, new coach, Offense won't look good. Weber looks good. Weber looks like they are going to keep things rolling, even with some turnover in the coaching realm. So I'm very impressed with Weber State, and kind of told you so on UNI, and I think that's just kind of how it's going to play out. So the Rev, what do you think, man? You're rocking your SFA gear. You got your Brookings hat on. What's up? Who impressed you? Who'd you hate?
Well, first of all, I'm a little confused. I thought Virginia was a Commonwealth, not a state. But sorry, Jamie, just didn't want to correct you at your home stat there. But
okay.
Morgan State has impressed me. They went in, they beat a Richmond team that a lot of folks thought were good. Jamie and I didn't think they were that good. We both saw that they hadn't reloaded. But then they hung in with Akron. They almost beat Akron. And if you look at the rest of their schedule for the month, they've got Towson and then they've got Albany in back-to-back weeks. And that's I think they'll beat Towson. Then you have the game against Albany at the end of the month. They could easily be sitting at 3-1 with 3-0 in FCS, and you would have a hard time saying where have these guys come from, and they will give NCCU a run for their money when it comes to that to winning that conference. We talked about already. Holy Cross did impress me the way they played against BC, even though BC did like Jamie say, basically big brother, little brother, fight with them. Idaho, obviously, you can't not be impressed by the thrashing that was done by an FCS team to an FBS team, even if the FCS team was viewed as a favorite. My bigger concerns or upsets is it seems like we've seen a lot more D2 schools upset FCS schools this year, and I'm blaming it up, and it's mainly on the Pioneer League. Yeah. And to be fair, the D2 teams have more scholarship players in the Pioneer League, but there's been a lot of surprising results. I've seen a lot more scalps from the D2 level to the D1 level. And so I know it's an FCS show, but we got to give those schools a shout out because they're going in and doing what they need to do.
Handling business.
Yep.
Yeah, crazy. You can't just praise the FCS when they beat the FBS and not be like, okay, well, the lower levels kind of doing it to us too. So, Jamie, impressed, not impressed? What do you think?
I'm going to kind of go a little off the board on who I'm impressed with. Rev hit a lot of – I'm rocking the Idaho for the demolition of an SBS team. We all know Nevada, awful. However, I'm going to go to the UAC, and I'm going to go Tarleton State. Now, if you look at them, so they played McNeese or McNeese if you're in Louisiana, and they played North Alabama. They've hung 50 on both. And no matter what, yes, those are teams that aren't as good in their conference. But if you go in there and you hang 50 and you're winning by multiple scores, that's impressive. That's a team that's on the rise. I think there's some good things happening at USC. Abilene Christian, same thing. A couple of solid wins. Tarleton, the receiver, Johnson, 6 catches, 219, and 4 touchdowns. And that game was actually quite fun to watch. Tarleton put it away in the second half. Turning point of that game was a punt, and they got called for a fumble that Tarleton recovered. And initially the flag came out because of contact, but the guy got pushed in, and nobody saw it. And Brent Dearman, I don't know how he kept his cool, because they should have gotten the ball on a penalty because they didn't. They initially threw it and they picked it up. And that was a big turning point because Tarleton next play in, and the next thing you know, boom, boom. So it's a quick strike offense. I was very impressed watching that game. And I flipped to that right after I finished watching the big battle. So I was watching a little bit of everything and caught that. So, yeah, Idaho, obviously Tarleton. Southern Utah didn't perform as well yesterday as I would hope. They had a pretty rough game on special teams, but got me a new hat. Thanks, Coach. Got a couple shirts, but I had to wear Idaho tonight. But I can't not mention them since Coach hooked me up with a nice hat here that I had to debut on our podcast tonight. So, but yeah, definitely looking at the UAC for a couple of up-and-coming teams. It's a stronger conference than you think, and it's definitely better than Southland.
That is legit. We appreciate Coach with the hookup, and that's a multi-view helps, of course, and everything, but hardest working stats voter right there, guys. I've said it a million times, and good for Tarleton. Good call right there. Last one I'll throw out, guys, just for awareness here is I think people punted pretty early in the preseason, and they did already on Fordham. Fordham, we might not be giving the fact that they lost to Albany 34-13 to start the year. But then Albany, in the last 2 weeks, lost to Marshall by 4, lost to Hawaii by 11. I mean, so you're not talking about blowout losses. They got pretty close to those FBS squads. And Fordham upset Buffalo in the MAC and then beat Wagner the week before. So they're sitting at 2-1. So Fordham not dead in the water yet with an FBS win yesterday. So impressive by them. So Preston, great question for the Big Seven. Gentlemen, that is a lot to digest. And that really definitely, makes your stomach turn a little bit. Better fill those suckers with some tacos.
It's time to put your money where your mouth is. And if you're right, put some tacos in there too. This is Thompson's Taco Bets.
Mitch Fargan definitely hooked us up with that question about Jackson State and HBCU making the playoffs. So here's the thing, Rev. Here's the thing, Jamie. We're going to go all the way to the playoffs here. And our taco bet this week is going to be, do we see a MEAC or SWAC team make the playoffs this season? So one taco on the line. Before we give our answers, looks like there's a big taco bet, Rev, for you and the Taco King. Why don't you let the fans know what's going on with the taco bet between you and Brian Thompson?
So Brian has been quite vociferous, I'm going to use that word again, about how good North Dakota State is this year and how they're now going to, because SDSU showed their vulnerabilities, that NDSU is going to whoop up on them. And you know what? He may be right. But the problem is that he's forgetting that a team that's flying under a lot of folks' radar, who is a lot better than people think, is coming into Fargo when Central Arkansas comes in. And the big thing about Central Arkansas coming to play North Dakota State is that this will probably be the best defense that they face up until they get into Valley play. And I'm not dogging Eastern Washington when I say that, but Nathan Brown has built a defense in Conway. He's got great running weapons with Powell and Darius Hale. This will be one of probably the fastest games you see time-wise because of the amount of running that's going on. But so Brian and I have a 25 taco bet.
Ooh.
There's no
Now, is that straight up?
Straight up.
Damn.
That's my confidence. And you know what? If UCA loses, but they lose by 7, I'm not going to be upset that I'm paying off the bet, right? Because it really was more just to prove a point that you can't look that far ahead. But it's also, I have to back my conference. I think that's going to be one hell of a game. I wish I could go to Fargo to go watch it because I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to be there for all those Bison fans whose beautiful bride is not driving down for a bridal shower, so they're not sitting at home with their 3 boys, not in the Fargo Dome. That may be the scenario at the Frazee household this Saturday, but that's okay. The boys and I will jersey up and enjoy it. So, all right, guys, let's get to the taco bed here, and we'll enjoy those tacos together in Frisco, Rev, no matter what. Jamie, what do you think? MEAC or SWAC team making the playoffs? Yes or no?
Nope.
Don't
think so. I know, like, Rev made a great case there, Morgan State. I think they are a very good team. Way better than I thought, obviously. I could go back. Let's see. Where did I have them to start the year? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go down.
98.
98.
They won't be 98 right now. I mean, obviously, I do all of them each week, but I don't know where I'm going to have them yet. But they're not going to be in the top 25. They'll be pretty darn close because they're a good team. But when you look at anybody's ballot this week, you'll see 35 teams that deserve to be ranked because so many teams have played so well.
That's exciting. Good for the FCS. I'm going to go yes. I'm going to think that the conference auto bids is going to have impacts and the Rattlers winning. And I just think there is a little bit more talent in that second or third tier. So I'm going to give a yes to an HBCU team hitting those playoffs this year for fun. Rev, what do you think?
Yes. And here's why, because I do think if Morgan State does win the next 2 and they run the rest of the MEAC schedule, even if they win or lose to North Carolina Central, they're going to have the resume to be in the playoffs. And if they win the MEAC, then NCCU is going to have the resume to be in the playoffs. So I think you're going to see a MEAC team do it, not a SWAC. So that's my caveat to it.
Ooh, I like that. Not too shabby. Well, we'll enjoy the tacos, whether we're right or wrong, regardless. And gentlemen, let's get into some beautiful, beautiful quick questions.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. These are the quick hit questions of the week.
Oh, these are just as beautiful as the Big Seven, guys. And we're going to start with Andrew Markham here. Andrew, my Margarita friend, he asked a lot of questions, but I just couldn't get them all in, so I included them a bit. But we will always answer things, even if they are off the wall and they don't actually relate to, FCS football. So with that, he says, fun fact, a shrimp's head is in its, or a shrimp's heart is in its head. That being said, which of y'all enjoys seafood cuisine? What is your favorite seafood dish? Mine is a shrimp and crawfish. Oh boy, I can't even say this next word.
Etouffee.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Etouffee.
Andrew Markham with some amazing questions. All right. Are you guys sea fish people? I'm going to guess you are, Jamie, based off knowing that word.
When I'm at the beach, I like seafood. Otherwise, I don't really eat it that much. I like a good, good flounder, either grilled or fried. I like some good fried shrimp. Not super high on seafood, but I will eat it when I'm at the beach. It's not one of my go-tos for sure.
Gotcha, Rev. I mean, you're right by the water.
Yeah, but I prefer land animals over sea animals, but I do love oysters and scallops. So I will chow down on those anytime I get the opportunity to.
Very cool. I'm pretty sure sushi doesn't count, so I think that puts me in the no category because that's not really seafood. So, all right, guys. Jeremiah Rash, shout out. Thanks again for the bobblehead, my man. How about a breakdown of the FCS over FBS wins this week? Also, which games you guys looking forward to most for week 3? Finally had some of those FCS FBS upsets. Again, super proud of teams like Fordham for getting that victory. I mean, Idaho showing, hey, if you think there's a difference between FBS or C or B, a label, absolutely not. Like some of these teams at that FBS level are absolute trash. Jamie, do you have a game that you're really looking forward to coming up here in this next week? There's not a lot, honestly, when you look at the slate that pumps you up. This is kind of a weird week.
Yeah, I mean, I really am looking forward to Central Arkansas, North Dakota State. People might call it a cop-out answer, but I think it's a real test for Central Arkansas, who I have winning the UAC. And can they go up to the Fargo Dome and handle business? I would pick North Dakota State. I think North Dakota State looks measurably better this year than last. Cam Miller, I feel like he worked hard in the offseason. He looks pretty good. He's handling the game. And the other dimension with Cole Payton, that's going to be tough for other teams to handle. And the defense is still holding their own. Although I thought they would take a little bit of a step back, they look very solid. So very big challenge for Central Arkansas. I want to see if they can meet it.
Should be fun. The Rev, is you and I the SFA of 2023? You asked this question, so you can't even answer it, even though you're an SFA fan. No, because SFA had legitimate reasons or like things we could connect from the previous season for hype. There was nobody ever said anything about you and I. They never said one thing of why they were going to be good. So I don't buy that. I don't think it's the same category. You disagree.
Oh, no, I disagree with what you're saying about SFA. SFA last year, and that is my school. They were ranked in the top 10 not because of who they beat, but because of who they lost to. That was what drove them to that, and the way they performed. I said to Sam Herder, I was like, I don't think we're a top 10 team. I flat out said that before the preseason. So I just, and by what I mean, when I say SFA, I mean, everybody had all this hype, all this expectations for you and I. They thought Theo Day was going to come out and just be this baller quarterback. I even said I thought you would see his name as you get near the Peyton Award nominees, and they've just come out, flatter than Central Iowa. So I just, that's more to that comment. It's just not meeting the expectations that you have for them.
Very good, my man. Jonathan Zinnel wants to know, after Idaho dominated Nevada start to finish, how do you feel their chances are next week against a much tougher opponent in Cal? Rev, they got a shot? You think they can beat Cal this week?
I mean, Cal. I mean, look at who Cal's played. They beat up on North Texas, who lost to Florida International, a team that can't afford pads.
The
right?
thing is that they had that 4-point loss to Auburn last week, so that makes you go, what, you know, it was at home, but still.
Yeah, no, I think Idaho has a chance. It is hard though, because this will be their third week on the road. That's a lot of miles going from up there down to Beaumont and then to Reno, and then now you're going out to Berkeley. You know, that's a lot of miles. I can put some wear and tear on folks, but I mean, yeah, they have a shot. Everybody has a shot at getting an upset.
100%. I always have a shot, just like Morgan State jumping from 98 or what it was. Because I say that because Dustin Held the Rev actually asked us before he hopped on the pod, Jamie, is Morgan State top 25 worthy? What do you think? We get a little preview here.
Is Morgan State top 25 worthy? Yes. Are they going to be in my top 25? No. And what I mean by that is they've played well enough that if somebody ranks them in their top 25, you will get zero argument from me, unless they put them at like 8, of course. But if somebody ranks Morgan State, I have zero issue with that. I think the Revs guest from last week, Omar, I think he has them in there. No argument with me on that, but they're not going to hit mine. Just I feel like there's too many other teams that are deserving that I'm going to have to leave out anyways.
Very good. Mitch Fargan, do you like the new clock rules keeping the clock running after first downs, except the last 2 minutes of the half? Mitch, I've complained about this for years, and I guess this is starting to feel like the Matt Rant show, but seriously, why was this ever a thing? Like, these are college athletes. I know it's the chains. They wanted to give time to move the chains down the field, but come on. I've never seen a chain crew at the FCS level struggle. So I don't think there should be a stopping the entire game when there's a first down. NFL doesn't do it. College football doesn't need to do it. I'm not even going to get into the fact between 1 foot in bounds and 2 feet in bounds. That's for another discussion. But the whole thing, the clock should just keep going no matter what. That is a dumb rule. It makes timeouts worthless.
I've been at a game each of the last 2 weeks, and I haven't even noticed. It hasn't changed the game to me.
Yeah, and also to be fair, some chain gangs can't properly measure anyway. Shout out Sunbelt.
Ooh, yeah, baby.
He's damn right.
I like that one. Scott Flanagan and Zach Wilson Sr. has Montana State cut up to the Jacks and the Bison on the O&D lines. Are they a tier 1 team now? Ooh, very good. I think if you're watching on YouTube, you got head nods across the board. Yeah, those last year, don't forget that they basically started all freshmen and sophomores across the board who are around that 258, 6'5", 6'4" range. And Vegan has that Bison background, that strength and conditioning program going, and they've clearly taken a jump with that youth, and it's only going to get better and better over the next 2 years. So yeah, I think in terms of the line play, they're up there where they need to be. Here we go. Tim Malone. There probably isn't a very good answer to my question. However, I'll ask anyways. How do we avoid games being decided by a play review? In any sport, no matter the outcome of the call, games shouldn't end that way. Jamie, you seem like you got an opinion here.
I 100% disagree with this. You want the call right, period. Whether it goes for your team or against your team, you want it right. The technology exists, and I'm sorry that Jackrabbits and Bobcat fans had to sit there for an extra couple minutes and wonder. Now, I will say there should be a time limit to a review. You shouldn't be able to sit there and review for 2 and 3 minutes, because if you've got to review that long, then yes, you should go with the call in the field. But you want to give yourself as much opportunity to get it right as you can, and that's why we have instant replay in every sport across the board. That's why no matter what you think about flow sports, CAA has forced that relationship to include more camera angles, and this came straight from the commissioner, to enhance the ability to provide those reviews. So no, I completely disagree with this. You got to have the right call no matter what at any point in the game. And no, I don't want every play reviewed, because yes, that could draw it out. But there are things that need to be reviewed, and they don't always get them right. They got one wrong in my game yesterday, and it almost cost us. And, you know, I'm sorry that you're probably, Tim, a Bobcats fan. I'm sorry it didn't go your way. Call was right. That's what was needed. Keep it going.
And even if things are wrong, unfortunately, the human error almost has to be a part of the game. Otherwise, we're just going to stop everything and review every single play. So, Rev, you asked the last question here for quick hits. What's a food that you buy at the grocery that you could eat an entire thing of in a single day? It's probably not that impressive, but most grocery stores, they sell probably, a little larger than normal cookies with like a bunch of frosting on it. Like there will be a duck. There'll be like a Mario face. And my wife knows every time we go, she's like, oh no, we're right by that. I'm walking right up. It's like a $3 cookie. I buy it every time. I go home and I pound it when Finn's on his nap. So I eat one of those big cookies with frosting. I don't care how many years it takes off my life. Every time I go to the grocery store. So, Jamie, this is Rev's question. You got something?
Yeah, every time I buy a rotisserie chicken, I eat the whole damn chicken.
Good.
100%. Every time. Ooh. Both breasts, both legs, both thighs, both wings. Every time. There's nothing left. Picked it clean.
Damn, Jamie, that's a good pick. Rev, you asked the question, but do you got something?
Yeah, I got two. So one is pickles. I will go buy a jar of like the hamburger like chip sort of pickles.
Yep.
What are you, pregnant?
And I yeah, maybe. Been carrying for a while. No, and then chips and salsa. If I'll buy a bag of chips and a jar of salsa and just go to town. I don't know. Those are my two.
Outstanding. Well, we know everybody what they want to eat and what they're going to enjoy while they're enjoying their food while watching the game of the week.
This is the matchup you should be paying attention to. This is the FCS Fans Nation Game of the Week.
Second week in a row. Let's switch it up last second from what the agenda said. Here we go. Number 24, Southern Illinois University, traveling to play number 14, SEMO. What a matchup. SEMO is going to be at home. They're number 14, and Southern Illinois is traveling down the road. Okay, so here's the thing. I am not sold on SEMO just based off of, okay, they get blasted by Kansas State 45-0, and then they blast Lindenwood back 45-7. This is really the first matchup. This is the first game. It's their first shot. I think I'm sold on Jeremiah's Dogs, and I really think Southern Illinois is going to, have fun at SEMO this week. So I'm going to predict a big win. I'm going to go 34-20. And I'm going to say the Dogs come away with the victory. What do you think, Rev? SIU, SEMO.
Well, last year when they played in the War for the Wheel, it was in Cape Girardeau, and it was 34-31. And you saw the same sort of thing out of SIU last year that you're seeing this year. They had an FBS win over Northwestern. Everybody was hyped up about them, going to the playoffs. The whole Sock-Lukey thing ran amok, and then they just fell apart. And they play, they had some losses to playoff teams, but then they had some losses to teams they shouldn't have lost to. Nick Baker, though, is a stud. Like, I think SEMO is getting a little bit of the benefit of how they did last year. I think they're going to win the Big South / OVC, conglomerate of crap. But you got to go with SIU while they're hot. So I'm going to say SIU 38, SEMO 24. But it's the rivalry game, huge. You never know what's going to happen. But that's my take.
Yeah, when you're playing for a wheel, things can get crazy. So, Jamie, what do you got?
Yeah, these schools are 50 miles apart, so it's a fun rivalry. I know both fan bases will be into it, and as much as I'd like to add and make some drama out of these picks, I'm going clean sweep. Salukis, they just look like that team this year. They look like that team that is head on the way up, like Stone Labanowitz was still the quarterback, although Nick Baker's playing pretty damn good. And I think Stone would say the same thing. So I'm going to take the Salukis, and again, I think they're going to drop a 40 burger, probably 40-27.
40-27. All righty. Well, that should be – we'll see if it's a little bit of a better game than that, but we're all taking the Dogs. Jeremiah Rash, we'll see how it plays out for you. One last shout out to Walk On Apparel and the Versus Sports Simulator. Make sure you use promo code FCS Fans Nation when you subscribe to the Versus Sports Simulator or purchase any of your gear for Walk On Apparel for 15 or 20% discounts. And before we get out of here, I'd like to thank everybody for joining our Facebook and following our Twitter pages. I'm pushing about to be 15,000 Facebook members on the FCS Fans Nation group. And we're getting pretty close to 6,000 followers on Twitter as well. And make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. So those are all the promos, and they're out of the way. So it gives the Rev one last chance here this week to talk about his experience in Brookings. He traveled up. He watched the Montana State game all the way from Lower Texas to go check out that game with some really good friends who are on our podcast network. I'll give you the floor, man, to just talk about your experience before we roll on out of here.
Yeah, so I was so glad I got to go watch a great game. I know folks are upset about how it ended, but he was out of bounds. You could see it from everywhere in the stadium. But no, going to tailgating there, so many folks, so many, the Jackrabbit Illustrated guys, took me in. We were at their tailgate. I went and saw some of the other notorious Jackrabbit fans, and it was just awesome. I got to meet the president. I met Stig while I was there. I got a handshake. It was really funny to walking around because everybody was like, "Hey, you're the bunny." Right. And so that was an interesting thing. But no, just for all the South Dakota State fans who I might have interacted with or had a beer with this week, thanks for having me up there. I really appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope I get to come back because you guys really are just nice class act folks.
That is a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, South Dakota State fans, NDSU fans, they get all up in arms and all this, but they really are nice people. So it's a fun way to go. And they're very tall and very big.
Very tall.
Be nice to them because they're basically lumberjacks across the board.
Stackable washer dryers.
I love it. Jamie, congrats to your Dukes on beating Virginia. Rev, I hope the trip was great. We hope you enjoyed the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back next week. We appreciate all your support. Enjoy this beautiful week as we go into another week of great FCS football. Catch you on the next one. Boom.
Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred listening platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, or even YouTube. And make sure to follow our FCS Fans Nation social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football. Boom.
Bad buddy.
If they make the national championship game, I might buy another bunny suit and wear it again. and not tell anybody this time and just show up wearing it.
It'd be best if they made like a blue one.
Right? Like